Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's panel event on food and racial justice. My name is Kelly Henderson, and I'm the K-12 Education Coordinator for Chatham University's Sustainable Eden Hall campus in Gibsonia, Pennsylvania. I'm going to share my screen really quickly here so that we can just set up some basic information for tonight's event. So we wanted to just make sure that we're grounded together in some ideas behind this series. This series is called Social Justice and Sustainability, and each month we're focusing on a different intersection between an environmental issue and a form of social identity-based oppression and justice. And so each month is focused on those connections. And after this panel, we're going to be closing out this month on food and racial justice with a discussion group on Friday from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m., which you're all very welcome to join. And then in November and December, our next month will be on pollution, gender, and sexuality justice with similar panel events, discussion groups, and resource sharing. I'll share some upcoming events in the chat window shortly. And next month, we'll also be having a youth panel. So if you're watching the fantastic young panelists that we have tonight and you're thinking, hey, you know, I could do that, or I know someone that would be a really great fit for doing this during a future month. And if you're under the age of 18 or you know someone that is, please apply to be a speaker for next month's pollution and gender and sexuality justice panel. And that application deadline is going to be November 15th. I'll share some information in the chat.
So, okay, I have been working on this. Where's the one for the panel? Because I can't find
who's talking right now.
So
I just found it. Okay.
The link is from someone.
Is that Brooke? I think you're not muted. That's okay. So as part of this series on social justice and sustainability, intersectionality is really important to us, and so is systems thinking. So while this month we're focusing on race and food, actually every form of social identity is interconnected, and that's called intersectionality. And systems thinking is a really important concept to make sure that the solutions that we're coming up with for our communities are actually going to succeed. So an idea like food and problems with food systems is connected to ecology and land, it's connected to housing, it's connected to transportation, it's connected to so many of the other kind of problems that we face in society. And so the solutions that we seek need to be systemic, need to be systems thinking, and need to also be intersectional. And so we also really love the definition of sustainability from the United Nations. These are the Sustainable Development Goals, which really demonstrates systems thinking. It shows really social goals like goal 1, no poverty, and also deeply environmental goals like goal 13, climate action. But most importantly, all these goals are connected and we can't try to solve them in isolation, right? So our Food and Racial Justice Month and tonight's event is brought to us by a variety of different co-hosts, the Urban Kind Institute, the Black Urban Gardeners and Farmers of Pittsburgh Co-op, Grow Pittsburgh, Oasis Farm and Fishery, the YWCA of Greater Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh Food Policy Council. And tonight we are so excited to have two of those co-hosts with us in particular. We have, to start with, I am very excited to welcome Raquib Bey from Black Urban Gardeners and Farmers of Pittsburgh to talk a little bit about some opportunities to engage with bugs. Thanks for being here tonight, Raquib. Take it away.
Thank you all for having me. I am Raquib Bey. I'm the founder and executive director of the Black Urban Gardeners and Farmers of Pittsburgh Co-op. We're a collective group of Black growers in the Western Pennsylvania area. We work with all the partners that was mentioned today, that Kelly just mentioned. We have a 31,000 square foot farm in Homewood, which is a food apartheid area. You may be familiar with the terms food desert or a healthy food priority area. However, I say, we normally say food apartheid area because like most food apartheid areas, it's a neighborhood that is mostly Black, underserved, and in particular in Homewood, there hasn't been a grocery store there since 1995. With our partners, Grow Pittsburgh, Oasis Food, Junior Green Corps through Operation Better Block in Sankofa Village. We have a farmer's market. This is the third year consecutively, and we started one 4 years ago, and we all work together in concert to bring fresh food to Homewood. Now I'd like to welcome Danelle Houston from Grow Pittsburgh, another co-host organization, to share opportunities with you all. Hi, Danelle.
Hi, Cleva. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and thank
You're
you
welcome.
for having me here. So I'm Danelle Houston. I am the Director of Farm Education at Grow Pittsburgh. Grow Pittsburgh is an urban agricultural nonprofit, and we teach people how to grow food and promote the benefits that gardens bring to our neighborhoods. I oversee our farm education department, which has our urban farm sites. We have 4 currently. So our largest is in Braddock. Our Braddock farms is about an acre. We have a smaller 1/4 acre site in Point Breeze. We want a wing of a greenhouse at the Frick Pittsburgh. And then we are currently in the process of building a new greenhouse in Wilkinsburg as well. So we are looking forward. We do all sorts of education for adults and youth. So we're looking forward to having more people and having the opportunity to have people on site at the greenhouse when it's built, and having people come and work with us and see how to grow food more successfully, be more involved in farmers markets. And I love that Cleva brought up the idea of a food apartheid area. I agree with that, because food desert gives it implies that it's a natural occurrence. And food apartheid areas are not natural occurrences. They are systematically areas that are underserved with fresh produce and fresh food. So we work very hard to increase the local food economy in the areas that we serve. And we're hoping to, in 2021, to have more volunteers on the farm and have more in-person workshops for everyone, and hopefully we can get more involved. But for now, without further ado, let's get to our panel for tonight. To introduce the youth panelists, here is tonight's panel monitor, Chatham's Food Studies graduate student, Brooke Duplanche. Thanks.
Hi, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Like she said, I'm a second-year graduate student in the Food Studies program, the MA program at Chatham. And I entered the program with a sort of initial understanding of food justice as racial justice, yet obviously being white and also being from outside of Pittsburgh, I still have a lot to learn in this area as well, which is why I'm so humbled and really excited to introduce you to tonight's panelists. They're extremely inspiring and have already taught me so much. So now I'm going to ask them to share a little bit about themselves and their work, just to kind of start us off tonight. First, we have Peyton Thomas.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm Peyton Thomas. I go to Winchester Thurston. I'm a junior, I'm turning 17 this week. I mostly work with a lot of social and racial justice. I bake. I have a small business, baking business, Peytie Cake Bakery, and my form of activism is through writing and on social media, going to protests and just spreading more awareness.
Thank you, Peyton. We also have Azriah Crawley.
Hi, my name is Azriah, and I am a current senior literary artist at Pittsburgh CAPA. I don't really have that many interesting things about me, but I do know that for when it comes to my activism, I like to use my writing and all of the skills that I've learned throughout the past couple of years to try to emulate the things that I've learned.
Thank you. We also have Sarah Kornacki.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a freshman at South Fayette. A lot of activism that I do is with my school's Shout organization, and we definitely spend a lot of time spreading awareness and spreading inclusivity to our community and hopefully to the rest of our state, as we are working on lots of important meetings, spreading it around the country. And yeah, we are just really excited. I'm really excited to be here. And I know I have a lot to learn, and my fellow panelists have taught me a lot already. So I'm just really excited.
Thank you, Sarah. We also have Jazmine Thomas with us tonight.
I'm sorry, I'm having a bit of issues getting my camera started back up. Hi, I'm Jazmine Thomas. I'm an 11th grader, a junior at City at Charter. My activism is, anyways, my activism entails me doing meetings at my school, trying to raise awareness for social justice and racial justice. We have meetings talking about anything from politics to how colorism began and the origins of so many things. So we're not exclusive to one topic. I actually paint. I didn't include this in my thing, but I paint pictures of kind of like Black struggle, because I want that to be something that's more seen. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Jazmine. We also have Nisire Wilkerson with us tonight.
Hi, yes, my name is Nisire. I go to Westinghouse High School. I'm in 8th grade. I'm a part of a Narrative Justice, a podcast, and just of racial justice and different things like that. I go around in neighborhoods and help out and do different things about protests and make people's voices be heard. Thank you.
Thanks, Nisire. And finally, we have Shria Shyam.
Hello, I'm Shria Shyam. I'm a senior at North Allegheny Senior High School, and I've been an environmentalist for 11 years and a food activist for the past 5 years. I'm currently the team leader of Bye Bye Plastic Bags Pennsylvania, and I've also been the Pennsylvania delegate to the Global Youth Institute at the World Food Prize for 2 years. So generally speaking, in terms of my activism, I tend to endorse a more activist, or rather an academic and educational perspective.
Thank you all so much. So first, we're going to kind of start the panel with a few of our panelists actually sharing some of the work that they do. And first, we're going to have Azriah start us with a poetry reading.
So this piece that I'm about to read is an emulation of a supermarket in California by Allen Ginsberg, where he takes a real person and writes about a fictional experience with them. And my piece is centered around Eugene Connor, who was a politician in Alabama who was notorious for using hoses and dogs on Black protesters during the Civil Rights Movement. The bull sees red. Eugene Connor, you ignored the close sign on your way in. The explosion of your time bomb boots echoed throughout the empty diner. You demand to be served in the Greensboro boys' seats. You clear your throat when you want my attention. Dogs snap at me for a menu and point to the coffee pot behind me to order. You don't meet my gaze, but I still feel your eyes burn into my back like a bug under a magnifying glass. After I bring you your coffee, you take one long sip before going back to your unknown grave. The boom of your boots ring in my ears, and I ask, do you know who's running Birmingham while you're gone? Eugene Connor, you would die all over again if you knew it was a Black man. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Azriah, for sharing that with us. And now we're also going to have Shria give a brief explanation of what food justice even means and some of the kind of language behind that as well.
In the words of Congressman Bobby Rush, there's a problem when you can buy ketchup where you live, but not fresh tomatoes. Unfortunately, this isn't simply an anecdote for his hometown of Chicago. It's an issue that plagues many Americans every single day, alongside of many people across the world. More specifically, food activist Karen Washington endorses the term food apartheid with the premise that she grew up eating pink, nearly rotten tomatoes, and only realized that tomatoes had a red, ripe form years later when she started her own community garden. it's evident that we're attempting to address concerns of food security, we're lacking somewhere. And one of those significant locations is that we're not implementing a systemic approach, while we do attempt to implement a systemic approach in so many other ways. Indeed, when we're attempting to address such agricultural problems, we need to redefine sustainability, to refocus not only upon this arbitrary definition of an economy, of gross domestic product and of food as a commodity, and rather refocus on our economy as one that serves people of all races, people of all types, and one that serves our planet. Because our economy and its operation is rooted in natural resources and is destined to serve the people. And somewhere in the middle, we've been caught up in this series of numbers that defines our economy and our food as merely a commodity. To paraphrase Dr. Vandana Shiva, author of Who Really Feeds the World, food isn't a commodity because while it's okay that maybe only 1% of the human population has access to gold or silver, true commodities, it's not okay if only 1% of the world's population has access to food. Because food is life and food is a source of life. And when we look at our system and how it operates right now, we can see exactly where it's lacking there. Because we see a system created by the so-called West in order to serve the interests of the so-called West against the interests of the so-called rest. One that endorses industrial practices, those that are applied in factories and those that are applied in steel mills of the Industrial Revolution through the Green Revolution to people and to farmers and to the environment. And that occurs through practices such as monocropping, newfound irrigation practices, pesticides, fertilizer, and genetically modified organisms, specific practices intended at increasing profit at the potential expense of the people and the environment, which results in long-standing problems such as soil erosion, salinization, bioaccumulation, runoff, and a lack of biodiversity. And there are temporary solutions proposed to this. We hear these terms all the time in the news. Contour planting, we hear items such as salt-tolerant crops, integrated pest management, intercropping, and organic farming. But oftentimes these solutions are effectively putting a Band-Aid on a wound that goes much deeper. It's a systemic problem, and we can't attempt to resolve inherent components of its physicality in order to necessarily redress the entire system and its implications. And that's where we can see on this scale between industrial agriculture in a completely pristine environment, indeed solely a focus on resource management, the implementations in the newfound fields of agroecology and agroecological systems in items such as farmers markets, community gardens, and biodynamics, or rather biodiversity further, and organic items, and community-supported agriculture and permaculture. Indeed, our agricultural system requires more community effort, systemic change, and a shift to an ecological paradigm, which is exactly what we're lacking right now. And if we attempt to redress the input and the system, then we must also focus on the output. Because the output is a system that, according to a study by Ard and Taylor, creates a situation where among poor neighborhoods in Detroit, there is a higher percentage of African American individuals who are more distant from a supermarket, on average 1.1 miles further from a supermarket that serves them real food, real tomatoes instead of ketchup. And that's exactly what we need to resolve in order to resolve so many other crises. Because whether it's the economic recession or the coronavirus pandemic or healthcare, it all comes down to questions of food and racial justice.
Thank you so much for that impassioned kind of educational portion that you just gave us. It's really great, and I'm sure a number of those concepts that you brought up will definitely be a part of the conversation tonight. So thank you for giving us introduction. And now we're going to have Nisire is going to introduce his podcast and his activism work as well.
Yes, thank you. So the Narrative Justice podcast is about police violence, racial justice, and invisible people. Basically, it talks about what's going on around the world, or just in general, about in Pittsburgh, or just like how we see people getting arrested for being the color of their skin. So basically, they're going to give us a clip of what it basically is.
Well, hello. Welcome back to CS Podcast, which highlights police violence in Allegheny County against Black, brown, marginalized, and invisible people. My name is Nisire. Now, in today's episode, we'll be discussing a situation involving a corner store at Homewood in Frankstown where a 12-year-old girl was held hostage with a gun for allegedly stealing $4 worth of snacks. Joining us today is Ms. Amber Salone, who has been leading the charge and holding the store accountable for their actions.
Nisire, do you also want to tell about this second clip that you have that again addresses food justice and racial justice?
The second clip talks about basically food and food justice, and just how it talks. It's one with the episode with Farm Montgomery. I think she does a lot of different things in I don't want to say Brad or McKeesport, and she helps with food, lack of grocery resources, just like that. You can listen and explain a little bit more details.
This is the worst. This is one of the worst places to live for Black people and Black women. One of the worst places for Black women. So I think that stat has kind of been erased because a lot of people erase Black women and what we go through. This is one of the worst places for Black women in several different categories. So there's a reason for that. It is not by circumstance. That is by design. So we as Black people got to talk about why is that happening? Why is that occurring? Half of the reason is the self-hate that we have within each other. We have internalized white supremacist ideals. We use that against each other to fight each other. We're just not supporting each other. We are literally picking and choosing to help when it comes to systemic violence. And a family like Ramir Talley's family is the consequence of something like that.
Right. And what was the reason why place to live for Black people? What is that reason?
Oh, there's so many reasons. Definitely racism is at the core of that. The way these systems are designed is at the core of that. With not being designed effectively to support Black and brown communities. If you look at some of the Black and brown communities and the businesses that are there, liquor stores.
Right.
Rarely do they have a grocery store. So over here in the Mon Valley, Clairton doesn't have a grocery store. Braddock doesn't have a grocery store. Braddock lost their hospital. We have the hospital here in McKeesport, but the Mon Valley is not like a close together spot. You have to get here to go to the hospital in McKeesport. You have to get an Uber, you gotta get a jitney, you gotta get a bus. You can't walk to the hospital here. So the way it is designed where there's in the Mon Valley, in every neighborhood, probably over 250 vacant properties that are just kind of sitting there and nobody doing anything to them. Our educational system is an issue for Black and brown kids. They're suspended more. If there's law enforcement, which there is in a lot of these schools, we're actually having a protest over here Saturday for no police in schools. So McKeesport has a police force. Yes, West Mifflin has one in East Allegheny, and I believe that there's more that we don't know about, but those three have police. So if you look at the data, which is right on the website for the state, most of the Black kids are sent get referrals to law enforcement.
Thank you so much, Nisire, for sharing those clips from your podcast with us. And I kind of want to use this as a starting point to open up the conversation. There were several things that have already come up in your own presentations and especially in the podcast. And so would anyone like to begin with some reflections on how food and racial injustice is present in your community and how you all respond to them?
I don't know about y'all, but I just need to take a break just to, after hearing all of that. It was so true and so powerful, and having to just hearing it and just also just validating my feelings around, especially Black women and how they're not protected, how we're not protected in Pittsburgh was just so good to hear. So that's what I'll say.
Going off of the point that was made in the podcast about the grocery stores in lower income neighborhoods, I think that's a really important thing that Pittsburgh is failing to address, not even just for like the inner city, but even like the outer banks of it. Because here we have Squirrel Hill that has 2 Giant Eagles. And then on top of that, even more stores, little stores that you can get whatever you need from. You have places like Highland Park and Lawrenceville with Trader Joe's and Target and Whole Foods. And they have all of these places to get clean food that is actually healthy for them. But then you look at neighborhoods like Mount Oliver, when the only thing that they have are bars and a McDonald's and convenience stores. That's not fair, because then for the people whose parents can't afford to actually go out and get them meals, they have to eat things from these convenience stores. And as a lot of us know, convenience stores are mainly chips and pop and candy and stuff that's just not a well-balanced dinner.
Yeah, I think it's definitely noticeable the differences between the communities and what's available to everybody. In lower income communities, there's definitely a lack of good resources for food, and there's more because there, excuse me, there's less food that they need, and they think of that because they can sell more fast food restaurants. And so you'll look down Penn in Wilkinsburg and you'll see fast food restaurant after fast food restaurant, but there's not a Giant Eagle, a proper Giant Eagle. And I think it speaks volumes to the segregation that is within Pittsburgh.
And to go off of that, it's just like a lot of comparisons and just like how people who like have got certain things and then just the low income, like they were saying, it's the comparison, and it's just how like they use that as like I don't know the word, but just like how they think they're better than somebody just because of certain things they have. So
I think it's not only a concern about low income families, supposedly, it's also more specifically a concern of discrimination against Black and Latino families, more particularly, because even if you compare a white neighborhood and a minority neighborhood of equal financial standing, there's going to be a difference in terms of how they're treated through policy and otherwise in terms of through businesses. And oftentimes those minority and poor communities become money-making machines in a way for larger corporations. As in, I was listening to a podcast earlier this week, and it was basically talking about how they specifically attempt to position drugstores and then fast food restaurants in African American communities. And they specifically structure communities that way so they can basically force individuals who seemingly they don't care about for arbitrary reasons. And then because of that, they basically position them to first become ill off of eating poorly created food and then pay for the pharmaceuticals in undesirable prices and exceedingly high prices. So they effectively make a money-making machine out of those communities that they prioritize less. And then they do so internationally as well, in terms of prioritizing certain other communities less, and then making a money-making machine out of other countries and other cultures that seemingly we can't seem to respect.
It's exploitation, honestly. You recognize someone's lower and that by your own doing, and so you understand the mechanics behind how you can exploit them to get what you want and how you can continue this cycle, this vicious cycle of oppression and exploitation. And is not good.
I know we also talked in our conversation how these differences show in all of your schools. And I wanted to know if maybe Sarah or Jazmine, you wanted to reflect on that as well.
Yeah, I definitely can. So I am lucky and I go to a higher income school. So we get a lot of, I mean, I wouldn't say that the school food is like amazing, but it's better than other schools I've been to because I've traveled around since I am a member of a lot of clubs and organizations. So I've seen the differences and I've seen like how some schools aren't as kept up with as mine and how some schools have different meals that aren't as healthy and aren't as, I guess, good for people. And I mean, it's really eye-opening to see that because as a white female, I get a different kind of level of respect than my other panelists. And so I see this and I acknowledge it because if I don't, then if I pretend to hide it, then that's not going to get me anywhere. So I acknowledge it and I use it to benefit people because being here and being able to speak out, people will listen. And I just think that it's really, really ridiculous how so many different places and so many different schools get different levels of respect based on like the color of the students who go there, the ethnicity of it, of their students and of the wealth that their students have. Because if you look at a poor income school and a higher income school, you can very clearly see the differences in them.
It shouldn't be that way. It should have just been like equal, you know. It shouldn't be like be able to just be fair enough to be able to get what other people get. Like by the judging and just judging people by the color of their skin and just giving them food because of the color of their skin is just really unnecessary. Like we should all just get the same food as everybody else. At least we get feed. But I think it's how
Nisire, your audio cut out. Do you want to try again? Go ahead, you can try now and see if your audio is working because you seem like to be on a really good point.
I forgot. I really did. But I just said it's just it's really ridiculous how like if the person in charge is just use their powers to use like for example if this group gets group A gets this certain amount and then group B just gets one thing out of that amount. It's just like that doesn't work like that, and that's how you don't get nowhere just not being fair. You know, it's just I think. Schools, everybody should just be fair. It doesn't matter by color of skin or the way they act. Everybody should be fair. And that's how schools today need to understand, but schools don't get that yet.
I feel like jumping off of what Sarah was saying, I think that the fact that the quality of the school is determined by the grades of the school is kind of like iffy to me, and I don't know if that makes much sense, but I think I might be the only person here who goes to a Pittsburgh public school, and of that, I go to probably the best performing Pittsburgh public school in our district. CAPA is, I'm not gonna lie, it's a high performing school. I'm not gonna deny that, but I think that one of the main reasons of that is because we have a majority white student body. And over the summer, it came out that there were like people were being denied solely because of their race. And that was just, it was crazy to see because it kind of made me feel like my acceptance to that school was a bit more to meet a quota rather than to see that I was actually talented. But with all of the white students at our school, that means that there are going to be more parents who are willing to pay for tutors and such. And then on top of that, we also have a majority white teacher body. I don't know if that's how you would say it, but majority of our teachers are white. We have one Black woman in our entire high school academic program. And so that just means that the white kids are getting more attention. Like, and that's just the way that it is at our school. And then on top of that, our food looks better than more of the kids in the district. We have a salad bar, we have a pizza bar, and then we have the main course, and then we have like all of these other little side options. But then there are schools like Allderdice and Westinghouse and Perry that just aren't getting the same opportunities as us because they're not performing as high as us. But it's not the students' fault that they're not performing as high as us. It's more so the district isn't really putting the funding into these schools to try to make them better.
Yes, and totally to jump off that, to add that it's also sometimes the behavior or just how kids act, like for Westinghouse, when I was say 6th grade, Westinghouse was the bad school. Like if you get in trouble or just if you was bad in the elementary school, that would be academy, like that would be academy where you go to everything like that. So to jump off like that, like in Pittsburgh public schools, they use different schools as behavior schools as well. So I think, like you said, right.
Jazmine, I remember you said something the first time we all met over Zoom that has really stuck with me. And you said, I've never had a teacher who looks like me teach my history. And I want to know if you would like to unpack that and kind of speak on that a little bit more.
Yeah, I really do, because that's something that I've had issues with my entire life. My current history teacher has said some very hurtful things that have affected almost all of us. Like, it's something that goes in our chain of like POC students. All of us know about it. He made the comment of forgiving and forgetting slavery. He's made comments about being dumb for voting for this or that, or so many things that shouldn't be said, and it's not the time or the place, not the job, not the community for it. And it hurts to see that, because this is the same man who went through our units and talked to us and tried to convince us that what we were feeling was wrong. He tried to make it seem as though slavery was our fault and we should have done more. And that's something that I'm always going to have issues with, seeing history teachers now. I've never been in a school where I've ever had my history taught by someone who looks like me. And it's disheartening, because I'm tired of my history being messed up and twisted by people who don't always understand what we've been through as a people. Because I don't care what anyone says, civil rights didn't stop at the death of Martin Luther King. So we're not going to act like that's when all of that stopped. We're not going to act like segregation truly stopped then. We're going to acknowledge the fact that places in Pittsburgh have no Black people in them. We're going to acknowledge the fact that when my mother grew up in Pittsburgh, she was not allowed to walk in Morningside. She was not allowed to go inside of stores and buy food from the inside. She went up to a window and ordered through it. We're not going to act as if this is something that is so far back into the past that it's gone. It's just, it's saddening to think that this is what people actually think, and this is something that we have to constantly go through and experience. And it's not that teachers can change it. You can't just exile a teacher from a school and kick them out for this or for that because there's no proof. But when you said it in front of 30 students, I don't know. I'm hoping for change within our school systems. I'm hoping to see more Black teachers. I have one Black teacher in my entire grade, maybe 3 Black teachers in the school. It's just hard to see. It's hard to see not getting, I go to a school that's 56% Black. Our teachers don't reflect our demographic whatsoever at all. And I'm tired of being taught by people who don't understand me.
Wow. Just wow. To go off of that, it's sad. It's really sad to hear, see, think, and wonder that we don't have Black teachers that teach history, and we need that, because especially the future, like today, because we're going to have like teachers, and the problem is the teachers, the history teachers, that white teachers, they'll tell you a lie, and they don't tell you the truth. Like they'll mix up the story to make you think what was not what you are getting told, like what you got when you, how can I say this? When somebody tell you, like how your parents tell you, they want to change that and make like white people or just something was better than Black people, you know what I mean? But it's better to see a Black colored person teach history, because history teachers would know what they're talking about, because Black people went through basically history.
And keeping on, the fact that our history classes are also so Eurocentric, they're so white history dominated. There's more to history than just white and Black in the first place. There's no representation for people of Asian descent, for Native Americans, for so many people who just are swept under the rug, which also conflicts me. Native Americans, they were here before us, and we don't teach about them. Kind of strange to me, but hey, it's not like Christopher Columbus was the first person to get here. It's not like he didn't kill thousands of people as soon as he got here, but I'm tired of keeping a narrative that just does not exist, that America is all about white history, because white history rides on the back of Black history. So I'm just sick of our narratives always being switched around and reproduced into things that are false. They're false information. And this has been a thing since the first white man went to Africa. I don't remember when, but he claimed that African people had eyes on their chests and were strange and depicted us as monsters. And that same narrative has been kept till this day. And that makes no sense. We're seen as a dog or an animal less than a race. Even in school, we're seen as that. In society, we're seen as that. And it makes me so upset that that's what's taught in our history too. We make rebellion in history seem like it's this horrible, sad thing, when it's the only thing that has kept people to getting their rights. Like, it's the only thing in between. We look at certain situations like gay rights. We look at certain situations like 12-hour work days. I'm sorry, I'm kind of running off here. But all of these things were accomplished through rioting and protest. And we demonize protesters these days. And it's a narrative that needs to stop, because why is it okay then, but not okay now? Anyways.
Thank you so much, Jazmine. I really would like now to talk about how you all are in some way reclaiming a narrative or telling the story how you want to tell it through your activism, through your own protesting. And I really want to give you this time now to talk about how you do use your activism. I know some of you are artists. What future are you creating for Pittsburgh?
I just wanted to make a quick point in terms of the whole education conversation that we just had. I think firstly, it's a very critical point that Jazmine and Nisire made in terms of the fact that we need to have Black teachers teaching the history of the people involved. And I also think that the statement you made that white history is built off of Black history is very impactful, because I was watching I was reading an article about how they created the documentary White Noise for The Atlantic. And it was talking about how white supremacists create this message that because the white man founded this country, the white man should be the only one to the rights of this country. And I was like, that's wrong, because without slave labor, without the white woman, without so many other people, there would be no room for people like George Washington to be the president of the United States, as in he wouldn't have had the time away from cultivating food that he enslaved people to complete. If he weren't completing all such actions, he wouldn't have become the president. So I'm very glad that you made that point so explicitly. But I just wanted to make one point in terms of history lessons and social sciences overall. For a person like me who, I've been relatively privileged throughout my life, and I attend a wealthy school district, North Allegheny. For someone like me, I feel like it's important that we also add to our classes a discussion of privilege, which is something that just doesn't happen. As in, from a very young age, the discussion of privilege is categorized alongside of all of those items that you kind of just mentally ignore, as in it's not a part of the core curriculum. It's not an item that you realize until you see it in front of your eyes. We don't discuss, for people who aren't Black or aren't Latino or aren't of any other form of minority, we don't discuss what they're facing. And until and unless I started to take the initiative to read the news myself, I never realized what this whole question of racism was, or even what sexism was. And until I experienced sexism myself, I thought that sexism was a complete joke, a created item. That's just natural to what I would perceive of the world if I weren't told that that was the case, or that was how the world was operating. And then just as a second point, we're creating this system of systematic indoctrination. We're indoctrinating students like myself not to believe in privilege until we take the step ourselves to realize that we're privileged. And then we're also indoctrinating us to believe that white history is history. We're indoctrinating all of these items into the people who create a system that then materializes as poor education that's discriminatory, or a lack of access to food for certain groups. So I feel like it's all interconnected into this massive system that supposedly, hopefully, will have the capability to change someday.
Yes, and to go off what Brooke and you said about the question about activism and how we can do that, and then when you said bring it into the classroom, I think we should be able to talk about that, because it's just weird how we don't be able to sit down and have a good conversation about racial justice and food justice, or just anything that's Black, how Black people get hurt, how people get killed, how people sex traffic. It's just weird how we don't be able to get to talk about that unless we say something, and that should be a problem. We should have a curriculum, we should have a book that would be like, this is what we should be learning, and this is what's going on. And that's why we still need Black people and Black teachers to teach history, because not one person have taught a Black person so far about racial justice, about different things, our history basically. So I think we should, as youth, it should be a requirement to learn about our history and racial justice, period. We should have a book, like I said. So
continuing off of that too, I feel like that's the one thing I feel like kind of proud about, is that I do have a space to speak about that. But that didn't happen until one of our Black teachers got so upset and angry with the work that our other teachers were doing when it came to our history that she decided to make a change. And I think that's a lesson we can all learn, is that change isn't so far out of reach that you can't make a difference in it. So if you see issues within school, it took me 3 years to say something about a teacher who I heard say some stupid stuff to me. It took me 3 years for me to feel that comfortable with our only Black teacher in the school, for me to speak out against it, but I spoke out against.
So we have a question too that we can kind of include in this discussion of making this change and how you all do that in your communities. And the question is, how can we include youth voices more in decision-making processes?
I mean, for that question, there's definitely a lot of different ways, but if you really want to make a change, you have to start small, because I've learned that. I have tried to go way too big before. So I say start with your school or your community and go to one of the leaders and say, this needs to be changed. Find a group of people who will, who will support you and your decision and fight for what you want, because that's the only way any change is going to be made, is if you fight for it and you have the support and backing that you need.
Yes, also just use the resources that you have. Like, you can use your resources, you can like just find your way through it. And if you don't like something, say it. Like, if you don't like something, go up to a person, and you never know who that person might know, and they will pitch you on something like that it's big and that will get you to be known, and say something like that. So like she said, basically it's small things. Start from the littlest thing that you can go from.
And riding off of that, I would like to please make a point that you are not a snitch for highlighting the bad things you see in your school. They needed to be called out, because if you didn't do it and someone else didn't do it, that is a whole line and history of hurt that everyone will go through, because you felt as though you were a snitch or wrong for saying something. If you feel the confidence, or if you don't feel the confidence to go to someone else or to go to like a superior in your school, go to a friend and tell them what you saw, because there's always someone who is willing to do it. There's always a group who wants to say something. There's always someone who is willing to do something about something. That's a little vague, right? Sorry. What was I saying earlier? Oh God. With my discussions and keeping them going, I put that based on me and some of my friends, all going to them consistently. Because if you don't stay consistent in an effort that you're trying to push, it will fall apart. So I want, if you're going to source out a way to start activism in your own schooling, in your own personal life, stay consistent with it. It's the easiest way. If you practice it, it will stay in your life. Like, if you practice it every day, it'll stay in your life. Research it. Starting clubs and stuff, it gets weird. It gets muddy. Research as much. Find out from your seniors. Talk to your teachers if you feel comfortable with them. If your teacher said some weird stuff, go to administration, skip the other teachers. And don't ever feel like you can't be heard. Because if you have a voice, there's someone out there willing to listen to it.
Exactly, and it's just like, if you can say something to a kid, you can say something to an adult, you can say something to anybody in the world. So everyone has a voice and they can use it, but you just have to have that thing that you don't like. If you don't like something that a Karen's doing, your teacher doing, like she said, say it. You're going to say it to their face. You can say it out loud. Like, if your soul is telling you to say it, just say it, because you have a voice and your voice is going to be heard, like she said, basically.
I think that another really big thing to kind of bridge younger people and adults is that there has to be a common ground. Adults can't come in and they can't be like, well, I'm right and you don't know anything because you're young. But then again, younger people can't be like, you guys messed everything up, I know everything. There has to be somewhere to meet in the middle, because if not, it's just, they're doing what politicians are doing. You're just screaming and screaming and screaming, and nothing is going to change, nothing's going to get done, because the only thing you're doing is complaining about an issue that could have been fixed if somebody wanted to meet in the middle. So I think that just thinking that you know best solely because of the things that you've seen is really dumb, because there are always other people who have seen other things. There's always going to be someone else who has something to bring to the table. So that's a really big point.
And I think just for the adults listening and for the original question, literally just ask us. Yes, it's important for us to actively engage you and pursue and change, but also it works both ways. it's not a one-way street. You have to think, okay, I'm going to be doing this. Don't just do it. Think about, hey, is this a good idea? We recently had a whole debacle with my dean of students who sent out an email, didn't think anything about what he was saying, and ended it with, after the election, no matter what happens, like, if you win, don't gloat. If you lose, don't despair. And my mom had to email him and be like, check your privilege. Are you serious? What makes you think that that's okay for you to say to my child, to our kids? Apologize immediately. So I think just keeping in mind that, yes, we're young, but we have different perspectives on things, and we can fact check you and privilege check you. So
we should put Peytie in your place.
And also to the adults.
Okay.
It's okay. To the adults, I mean, engage in the conversations that make you uncomfortable, because if they make you uncomfortable, that means you're doing something right. Like, yeah, you might not think that it's the right thing, but in the future you will see that made a change. And I mean, it can be the smallest thing. Like, you could say, like, well, you need to listen to this, or, I mean, all sexualities are equal, like something like that. It can change someone's life. Trust me, I've been there, I've seen it. And you just have to try to connect. And I mean, adults, it can come to the strangest people. I mean, I've seen it. I've gone to the adults that I never thought that I would trust. And they've been the ones that have been there for me for years now. And so I think you really just have to find the connection with a student or a kid or a teen or really anyone. Find the connection and try to make a change, because that's the only way that anything's going to happen, is if you guys try together to make a change.
Right. It takes two people to tango. If the other person's want to do it, you got to do it too. It takes two people to tango.
Also, please allow us to sit at the table whenever you're discussing among ourselves, especially whenever it comes towards more academic conversations, for example. True, we don't have a college degree yet, but also many of the most intelligent people in our history that we continue to laud in our history books never had a college degree. So don't take that college degree. Obviously, a college degree is important in some cases, but just allowing us to sit into those conversations, even if we can't speak up, even if they're not in terms of activism or giving people equality, but to the extent of discussing food systems, there needs to be youth at those tables, because you're building food systems for a time when you'll be retired or perhaps even passed away. But the people who will be living with those food systems, who will be living with that ecology, is us. So if you're not even going to involve us in the conversation, then honestly, what's the point? So at least allow us to have a seat at the table. And then on top of that, if you can, allow us to have a voice at the table. But somehow even having a seat at the table is difficult these days. And to that extent, allow us also to have conversations with you, not arguments, because sometimes we really do want to just have a coherent conversation. Personally, as a member of my school speech and debate team, I've experienced items such as people in the middle of a debate round will just start justifying stop and frisk, for example. And I'm like, under what premise are you justifying stop and frisk? As in, I will debate this with you because that's the premise of the activity, but that also doesn't mean that we can ignore that we have inequality in this world. And even if we want to converse regarding these subjects, we need to make sure that we treat everyone with some basic level of respect.
Yes, also basically also invite us places, like invite people to the events, like invite people to protests, because you'll learn from that. You'll get different things from protest events. That's ridiculous. The people can take notes from that and they'll grow from that. If they see something they don't like, they can take that, write it down, and keep it moving. It's just, you have to invite us, like you said, sit at the table, converse with us, invite us to different things that you go to, so you can help us and help other people get their voices held, basically.
Thank you all so much. We're coming right up within the last minute, but I want to give you all this space to leave anyone watching with an action step, whether you want to say it out loud or drop it in the chat. anyone to pay attention to, organizations that you're involved in, so people can really continue to do this great work. And thank you so much. I feel like this was an amazing conversation. I learned so much. Thank you to all of your panelists. You all added such rich knowledge, and I just feel really thankful to be here.
I guess my statement will be thank you for being here. Thank you for taking time to be able to check yourself and to be able to grow from this conversation. And I'm so lucky to be able to be honored to be on this panel and to just know that there's always space for you to educate yourself.
Yeah, same thing for me. Thank you again, and it's an honor. And basically, everyone has a voice, and you can use it. And it doesn't matter how old you are. You have a voice, and you can use it. And someone's going to be there that listens to you. And basically, you be yourself and be you. Don't let anybody take that away from you. Basically.
Yeah, the most important thing that you can do is be yourself and use your voice. And you can't let anyone take that away from you, because that's the one thing that you can always say you have of yourself. So just keep fighting. No matter what happens, it always gets better. And just don't give up. I mean, use your voice. The battle will never end for equality. And you just have to keep fighting it.
When we look at the world as a system where we have inputs and we have outputs and we're putting so much into it, but so little for certain people, we need to make sure that we also don't give up to the extent of the fact that as activists, or even if you're in the field of science or policy, none of this is an individual fight, and none of this is the question of someone's career. It's the question of all of us coming together as humanity for our philosophy and for fighting for what's right. So in that particular context, just please keep trying, because we need every single voice that can discuss, not argue.
Okay, everyone, thank you again. I think we're going to end, but please continue these conversations, and thank you to all the panelists again.